look what I just got in the mail. You may be thinking, that's a boring looking piece of plastic. That's correct. But what these actually are some designs I had 3D printed and sent to me, because I don't have my own 3D printer. These are the plates for a keyboard I've been designing. It's going to be a split keyboard, so this is just 1/2 of the keyboard we have here. The switches will be mounted here, and this will be the back plate that rests on the desk. Something like that. I have them printed out quite strong plastic as an experiment. I wanted to do it metal plate, as you would expect, but that's quite expensive to get done with a custom plate like this, particularly one so full of holes. And the reason this particular part is so exciting to receive is because it's the last one I need before I can start assembling this thing. Because I've been making a lot of orders off eBay recently. Let me show you. Next up on the excitement scale, I've got these two packages here. They each contain an Arduino Pro Micro, which is going to be the microcontroller for the board. That is going to essentially hold the firmware and process the button presses to make the keyboard actually work. This is the bit I'm most shaky about. I have done some programming, but the firmware looks a little bit complicated to set up, particularly for a split keyboard. So I'm going to simplify my life by just building the left half initially. So I don't have to worry about making it work for a split board. It will just be one board that's missing most of the keys. But I do have another one in case I either break this one or want to move on to the other half of the board. We'll see how that goes. I may end up needing to redraw these and make another left side. That's why I'm just doing the left side and not both, because if I've got a problem and I've printed twice as much stuff, that's a lot of money wasted. Diodes are a must. These are going to separate the key presses so that it can tell which keys you're pressing when you push multiples at once. I've got some little ribbon cable here. That should make wiring up all the rows and columns to the Arduino a bit easier. And then I've just got some bog standard wire, which I'm going to use for joining some other bits up along the way. Then I've got this little box of tiny little separators and screws. They're M2 threaded, so it's a really small gauge. And that's what's going to separate these guys. Hopefully I've got a good size. Yeah, we'll see how that progresses. And lastly, I have the main event, which is, of course, the switches themselves. So, 10 Gatron Browns. Obviously, it's mostly accepted that the cherries are better than Gatrons for your mechanical switches. But I'm trying to do this on a budget. Maybe if I make another one, I might shell out and do it with some cherries. But from my brief fiddles with these, I'm quite happy with how they feel. For those of you who know nothing about mechanical keyboards, like myself a few weeks ago, the different colours are basically shorthands for different feels. These are tactile switches, so as I press it and it nears the actuation point, there's a bit of resistance. A bit like typing with a rubber dome keyboard like my Razer one here, which I'm quite used to. These 10 switches, though, obviously aren't going to cut it looking at this board, and of course there are going to be 2 of these eventually, and for that reason there's another 10. No, I'm just messing with you. There's another 10. And another 10. And another 10. And that is 60 keys. Which obviously isn't enough, so there's another 10. So, yeah, that is all of my switches that I've ordered off the eBay. I can't stop playing with these things, and it is kind of satisfying just having a handful of them. The next thing on the agenda is to start fitting all of these guys onto the mounting plate that I've printed. Once I've got them all mounted, I have to solder them together using the diodes. I can just use the diode legs to do the horizontal rows, and then this wire is going to come in to do the columns. And then finally this one's just going to connect it to the controller. So we're just fitting things to this. We are making the left hand of the keyboard, the idea being I can use it as a gamepad and mouse with my right hand. So it needs to be this way up, not that way up. If I've got the dimensions right, these should snap right into the board. So let's have a go. They should literally just drop right in there. That feels quite snug. I did hear a bit of a click there. Yeah, that fits. I feel like I need to bring this camera in a bit closer, so let's just move that. Alright, that's a little bit nicer, isn't it? So, let's get the rest of these clips in. I'll ramble a bit more about my design as I go. So, this design, oh my god, I love how well these fit. I'm really amazed that that worked as well as it did. But yeah, so I took a lot of inspiration from a few different keyboards that I'd seen online. A little while ago I sort of found myself thinking, why am I weighing myself down with the right hand half of my keyboard half the time? So I wanted a sort of keypad, which is obviously why I bought this Coolertron pad, and that's, you know, filling the role quite nicely. While I was shopping around to buy this, I came across lots of other keyboards, most of which very, very expensive, which is why I didn't buy them. One in particular is the Digna-Rise, I believe it is, or Digna-Rise, I can't remember. And it's sort of a kind of silly esports marketed thing. But it's a really quite cool concept if you ask me. I'm sure there are lots of, well, I know having looked, there are lots of more homebrewed, open sourcey keyboards that you can get kits for that are similar, but essentially it is a normal full kind of generic keyboard layout like the Razer one here, but split in half. So while you're gaming you can discard the right hand side. So that's a large part of the inspiration of this design, and you can see that I've got this odd jaggedy edge here. That's because I would like, if you want, to be able to slot the two halves directly together so the other half will be able to mount there. Or if you want, for ergonomic purposes, you can use them separated and split however you like to match your posture. I had no idea when I ordered these plates, or, you know, when I drew them up in CAD, that they would fit this well. That is such a good result for my first time 3D printing a part and making anything like this. Yeah. So, thoughts so far, quite flexible, but you know, it is plastic. We'll see how well it holds once it's bolted to the more firm back plate. But For now, it's time for wiring, really, which is a bit daunting. And you can see me do the soldering in the next installment, which I'll be uploading very soon, as I'm done editing. I hope you enjoyed watching this. It's been really fun to do, and I'll see you next time.